This movie was made for $700,000 and they made $300 million. Yeah. After $30 million was invested into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Picture Freedom. I'm here with my beautiful co-host, Liz Sanchez, our head of acquisitions for Sutudu TV. And you know what, Liz, today I want to talk about the thing that's been going on for the last month, which is with Obsession, and the controversy. But before we go into that, what do you think about the movie? Because I didn't get to watch it yet. Shame on me. Slap, slap. But
yeah, I think it's a really good horror movie, and it's so different than the usual things you see in the theater right now because it's an independent film. So it's really fresh, like new faces, is a new story, something that I don't think has been told before, or at least not in the way Curry Barker did it. So it's a pretty good story. I feel like you're gonna love it because the storytelling on the movie is really good. And that's one of your...
me, it's like I'm hearing great things about Obsession. There's a reason why it grossed over the $250 million, $300 million, $300 million in the box office. But I just need to have time to go there. But you know what, what I want to do is not review, because there's like a million reviews on this movie, right? And I got to watch, and I can't judge it without watching it. But what I could do judge is I could judge the one of the biggest talks that's going on, right? And I'm gonna put up the article so we could talk about it. So in Inc., this is Inc. It says an Obsession crew member is furious over her $6,741 payday for work on a $250 million hit. And here's the real lesson everyone is missing. And that's the headline from Inc. Okay, and this headline is like, is going berserks all across Instagram, LinkedIn. Every time I load up my feed, I'm hearing someone talk about it. And maybe because I commented already, I just kept getting pushed for this feed. But I want to talk about that. But before we think about that, before we say that, because we know what the headline is about, I want to show you something else, right? And because nobody talks about this, okay? Nobody talks about this, and then we could make some judgments and see what we think, right?
Would you trade $1 million tomorrow for $1,000 today? Because that's what the art director of Obsession did. But what's worse than this is not just one person's bad decision in the industry, but the sheer amount of people defending her like she has a legitimate point, and getting literally thousands of likes and millions of views about it, to the point where it does seem like the takeaway from all of this for a lot of people is quite simply that indie movies shouldn't get made. They would rather kill the entire movie industry than someone get paid what they're worth.
He has a great hook about will you kill your career over $6,741. That's great hook, right? But we're not here to talk about social media. But here's the thing that nobody's really talking about too. On Google, I said, how much was Obsession marketed for? And first of all, this movie was bought for $15 million, was acquired. Focus Features acquired the movie for $15 million. And then they committed another $15 million to market and distribute the movie. Okay? Nobody wants to talk about that because that's boring. And that's also Hollywood, right? What they do is they talk about like everyone else. This movie was made for $700,000 and they made $300 million. Yeah. After $30 million was invested into it. After $30 million. So when you think about it, it's a $30,700,000 movie. Okay. That's what the movie was made for. Technically, overall, in order to get it out, it was made for $700,000, but you needed $30 million to own the movie and to distribute the movie. So now the next question is, now that we have a discussion, because, Mr. Curry Barker is not in control at that point. If the movie was bought for $15 million, it's not the directors and producers' responsibility to, first of all, to even consider a bonus pay for any crew member on the set. Do you agree, yes or no?
As a producer myself, I feel like there's a really important difference to make when it comes to someone who got paid for their work and someone who invested on the outcome of the project. For example, as producers, that we have to go raise funds. We have to take care sometimes about legal stuff, everything that involves a movie production that for most of the crew members sometimes is, I don't say that she didn't. I think one of the things she said, she was from the art department. She was a production designer, and she said that she had to drive herself, sometimes other crew members, and doing all these things. But producers also do a lot of things that no one sees in order to make a movie
I agree. I agree. I agree that you're wearing 20 different hats and getting paid peanuts and pizza to
or sometimes
to
producers
do
don't
that.
even get paid until after the movie, and
Yeah,
that's
I
the
mean
least
that's a
they.
different story, right? Not getting paid and exploiting, taking advantage of people's dreams, hacking them and coming in. That's a totally different talk, right? But she got
Exactly.
paid. And she got paid to do what she loves to do, which is making movies,
Exactly.
right? She got paid more than people that got paid, more than people that were making a single month or 2 months, typically,
Right.
right? Number two, and then she got to be part of having a credit that could take her career to a whole new level. So it's not like she did it for free and she got paid, for this. But despite that, she's wearing 20 different hats. Well, I also think of this, man. Like, I think you knew what you signed up to. You
Right.
knew that was a $700,000 budget. You knew you knew this was low budget indie, and it was an opportunity because at the end of the day, 99% of independent films die before they even
Exactly.
before once they finish. It goes 80% of them don't even finish the movie. Let alone
Right.
go to post. Let alone this movie got finished and they got the TIFF, right? And so because now let me ask you this: if you wanted more money, right? Whether it's a bonus check that wasn't specified, whether there's more equity, and let's say it's equity, they own a percentage of the movie, right? Are you willing to take a pay cut to take the equity? And if not, are you willing to give your money back if you lose money on the movie?
No one on the crew usually is willing to get that.
Yeah,
You can
exactly
offer that.
right.
Like
Exactly right.
some people will do it, but that's what producers do. They probably don't get paid at all. They are the ones in charge of getting the film funded. And at the same time, you're not even sure if you're getting the investment back or any money for yourself back. So
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I just think that it's unfair to criticize the producers of the film, of the ethics
or
and the
the sponsor.
morality, knowing that they're the one that's putting all the risks on the line just for you to have they could. And here's the thing, like, again, you had a choice. It's not like they put a gun in work. You had a choice. And
Totally.
then you also have a choice called the internet. It's called ChatGPT. There's so many different opportunities. And then because this thing became such a big hit, it's the only reason why this is talked about. This would never get talked about if it flopped.
Totally.
And
And
they
for an
and the person that
independent,
lost out of it is the investors, right?
right?
At the end of the
For an
day. And
independent.
she came out with a bag that she made.
And then I saw another post about the lead actress in the Navarrete who was paid a lot less than many actors would on a movie this big. And she didn't get anything, like no cuts, no nothing, regardless of her being like the main star of the film. And in my opinion, she's one of the reasons that the film is so good because her performance is incredible.
But I will
And
guarantee you that she will get great opportunities now.
she's not talking about it because she's getting really, really great opportunities out of
Of
that.
course.
He's working with different brands.
I
So
guarantee she got some giant agency approached her, right?
totally.
She's got offers for being in all these other movies, and they're probably paying her six figures for the next movies. She just wrote, imagine she became this nuance and talked like this. I mean, like, okay, that first of all, you're only as good as your last hit, right? She took advantage of the hit, and she's gonna grow and she's gonna blow up. She's gonna make millions. That's what people have to understand. And I know these type of people. I know these type of crew members. Like, you got to be smart about this. Look, they're artists. They're artists. I get it. They need to be put into a better environment to be educated, right? And there's not enough of this type of talk, but hopefully it's a great lesson learned. And I do hope that she gets to still have a career in this business, because hopefully this is a hard lesson learned, because this social media thing is the punishing of her career, right? It reprimands her. However, that could have been that. I would use that as saying, look, I screwed up. I effed up by saying this. At the same time, you're welcome, because it created so much more PR around the movie. And it's the reason why the movie is still in the theaters right now, because of the PR. So you're welcome. And I also gave you more money without letting you know, by making another 100 million views for the film, by creating a controversy, because people love drama. People love all that, right? And then you know what she should do? She should come onto screen, like our podcast or someone else's podcast or the Daily Show, whatever it is, and do a deal, get into Saturday Night Live, and make fun of herself for screwing up.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like PR control for her career, because that's in my opinion the smart way of going about it, and going to the public and say, look, guys, I'm just an idiot. I'm just an artist. I don't know better. And the only thing that pissed me off is that they made $300 million. These people got rich. I didn't get rich, and I'm bitter. But you know what? It's okay. I'm going to move forward. Thank you.
Right.
That's all they have to do, and say it. And I don't even know what this person looks like yet. I haven't looked it up yet,
I haven't looked her up either. I just know that she was doing the production design of the movie, which is pretty important. But
Production designers are like my best friends on the movie.
but I mean, as a producer, I think it's hard to trust someone that went out there and talk about everyone, like about the filmmaker, the producers, about the movie itself.
No, look,
it's hard.
yeah, yes and no. Yes, I agree. Yes, I don't agree. You know why? Because nobody's perfect. Everyone's
Right.
raised differently. We are living in cancel culture world, right? And that's not fair to people either. That doesn't understand. That's not coached properly. There's a million different variables that you do not, that some people just don't deserve. You don't know what they do. You don't know if she goes to the soup kitchens every weekend to help with kids or homeless people. You don't know what they do. So who are we as a public to judge someone that we don't know? The only thing we know is that PR put out there. What if it was a PR play or marketing? They did spend $15 million on the movie, and nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about buying the movie for $15 million. Nobody talks about marketing the movie for $15 million. Nobody talked about how they used $15 million to market it. Maybe this was part of the stunt and pushing the PR even further, making it go super viral. And the other part would be that, the Curry Barker and the producing team has zero control. If you bought the movie for $15 million, guess what? They own it. They own the movie forever, and they move. And everyone in the crew, including the director, will move on. And I don't even know they even negotiated points on the movie. I don't know they moved. They might say, hey, Curry, I want to give you $500,000 and go away. Who knows what happens? I don't know what the deal is.
How the contract, the agreement between them was, because if it was a usual distribution, that they give him an MG of 15 million.
Charles, that's not MG. $15 million is not an MG. $15 million is a buyout of the film.
Oh my
God! They
God.
bought the movie. The distributor, they bought the movie.
Curry Barker as a filmmaker is not talking about that. He's not saying like, oh, they took advantage of me or whatever, because he didn't even knew how good.
Yeah, because Curry Barker probably made $2 to $3 million out of the movie, out of the acquisition, right?
Exactly.
And so after taxes and everything else, right? Who knows where the money goes? Who knows what's negotiated, right? What's upfront, what's not? But we just know that $30 million was invested into the movie, and when that type of money comes in, I would guarantee you that was a purchase. That's not a licensing deal. Okay, Focus Pictures purchased the movie, and now they own the rights to license the movie to anybody like us to have it. They own it, right? Yeah. I don't know if Curry owns the movie. Curry, if you're seeing this, you let us know if you own the movie or not. But my hunch is that you don't own the movie anymore.
I don't think he owns it anymore. I don't think, not even.
Would you want to, if you bought the movie for $15 million? Would you?
Oh my God!
Would you?
Let me tell you.
You would just walk away, Liz, and say, "All right, here's $50 million. Here's 100% of my business." You walked away. You're good. That's the purchase. That was the point of the purchase.
My investors are good. My producers are good.
Yeah, everything's paid off. You're good. You're moving on. You go and make your next deal.
Then we go back to what it would be like. For example, us having a movie like Obsession, having a Sutudu original, and we release it ourselves. We don't think like someone like Focus Pictures comes and they want to buy it out. Would you do that, or would you do it knowing the things you know now?
I think it depends. I think we play in a very unique position. I think that anything could be bought, right? Except, integrity and morality, those ethics. But and you certainly can buy respect, right? But anything else you could buy in life, right? And you go in there and you go any type of business and you drop enough money, you could buy it, right? And so that's not, so I think that for us, if we had the money like Focus, and I would say like we would be like Focus. We will, if I knew that this movie, because all the analytics, all the marketing, all the successes that we've had, in, let's say we've been around for 10 years, and we know what's going to win. If I knew that this movie is going to make $300 million, trust me, $14 million is a drop in the bucket. Cheap as hell. It's a deal. You're going to, clank champagnes all day if you bought that movie because they knew they were going to make that money. They knew they were going to make that money, right? They knew they were going to make at least 3x. They were usually anyone that does acquisitions like that, they know they're going to make at least 3 times the money that they bought it for.
Of course.
They knew that. Every marketing, anybody that has that type of team, they know what the market looks like. They know the territories. They just know how to do it. They have all the data, the tools that most people don't have, right? Yeah, they know what's gonna. They just know, and they go. It's in TIFF. It's the one that like they just have to see in people's eye. Oh my God, I love the movie. I can't wait. And it's just like it's one of those things they probably felt in the theater, and they were like, oh my God, I need to have this. And they went into a bidding war for $15 million, and that's a rare thing. But it wouldn't be rare if you make great freaking movies, right? It's just the problem is that there's a lot of movies that are just not great, and it's not worth that type of money. But this one was worth. It's horror, it's thriller, it's psychological, right? It's young. It's young. It's global. Yeah, I mean, like they just knew, and like you said, it was different than what they've seen before.
Really different.
And don't forget this: Curry Barker has a community.
Has an audience, exactly.
So I wouldn't even count on Curry Barker's community first. I counted that it's a great movie. Congratulations to them. It went into TIFF for a reason, right? I don't know if it was politically pushed in. I don't know, but let's assume it was not. That TIFF actually loved that movie, right? The people got into the 3 largest film festivals, right? TIFF is one of them.
Yeah.
And it's like also a casino to get into a film festival like that too, right? It got in, right? And it just checked off all the boxes.
As well, because in order to be in festivals like TIFF, you need to know certain people.
First of all, raising $700,000 for independent film is not an easy thing to do, right?
No.
And they managed to do that. And so I'm curious on how they even raised $700,000, right? What did they do? Mom and pop, who's rich in the family? Was it a doctor, lawyer? Who, how did they raise the money? I didn't, you saw the credits. Was there like 250 executive producers on it? Or was 3, 4, what, who are they? Gotta look that, I gotta look it up, right? And, so I think that's, in my opinion, that's my take on it. So look, I'm neutral, right? Like in the beginning, it pissed me off a little bit that someone was like being that person, right? They're the Karen, right? So right, in the film, and everyone talks, you just ruined your career by doing this, da da da. And then I see the second half where, look, I feel bad for her. It's very hard to make money, and yes, it made 300 million. She should have got at least another $50,000 bonus, or give her. She's a production designer, and she spent, I don't know, 10 years in her life in this business already. I don't know whatever the story is going to be, and they felt for her, great, and on the sidelines, you got the focus feature saying, keep debating. I love it. Just keep driving the views up, hundreds of billions of views on this thing. Great. So at the end of the day, I say, like, I think it's still very good for everyone. And the person, I don't know what her name is. Sorry, but I'll figure that out later. But it's still good. It's still good publicity for her, and she still has a shot at this. And I would say the way she wants to go about it is handle it properly, which is don't go in there and showing and really look. Give you a perspective. It's a great opportunity to go onto the news. Everyone's gonna take her, and she could interview what her perspective was, right? And she could go in a rant to beat her career down to the ground, or she could go on a rise by I wouldn't call it apologizing, because that's the perspective, but I would say, look, I just want to give you a perspective. I understand. I apologize with the thing. There's no control on that. But I would say, like, I'm not that type of person. I just want to let you know that I shouldn't have done that at all. And I'm sorry for hurting anyone that along the way, but for saying bad things. And I didn't mean to do that. And then you move forward, because that shows a lot of character for the person too. Exactly. So me, like, going back to your question about Sutudu TV, look, I mean, I think we have to live in original shows, right? We have to get invested in. We have to raise our own funds to create our own network and our own originals, so then we can build our own fan base. Whether we luckily we own our own platform, we own control, and great, and we don't have to worry about YouTube shutting us down if you go to YouTube. Right. By the way, YouTube doesn't allow you to have horror films on there for a reason. You can't put a horror clip; they block you. Right. Just letting you know, that's how it works. Right. And so those are all fearful things. So just to let everyone know, like, as a platform owner, we want to create originals for sure. We want to buy originals like Obsession. We can't afford $15 million yet, but I could tell you that with feature films, but right now we don't have the money, but we have brand strategies. We know how to make money. And that's a whole different thing from a lot of other platforms that don't know how to make money in this business in today's market. It's like a lot of people don't ask the right questions, right? And one of the questions would be, how does a platform make money? Nobody asks those questions. And everyone talks about it's TVOD, transactional video on demand. It's SVOD, subscription like a Netflix, or it's advertising like Tubi. And then we get to make pennies or under a penny per ad view, per whatever it is, whatever the model that's going to be. But nobody really takes the understanding of how a platform actually really makes money. Right. And nobody asked me how we make money at all. And so when you don't get those type of questions, you kind of understand what the market looks like. And for us, we know how to make money through sponsorships, brand deals, marketing, visibility, yada yada, how we package things up, how it, you know. And so, you know, like with Obsession, lucky them, because I would have ate that all up as well. Would have done a deal with all the cinemas, made, you know, get some investors, you know, market the hell out of the movie, bring in the best agencies you could find, and do really well. Like, but you know, and you know, but you know, it will be our turn in the future, right?
Right.
But this is a great lesson learned, right? I mean, what we see here is that there's a chance for, so it's not about $700,000. It's about making a great movie in the AI world of abundance of like free content. And still, so it doesn't that tell you that there's a lot of hope that cinema is still
Future?
alive?
Yes. That was my favorite part because I've seen one of the best films I've seen are independent films. So I was really excited to see that in the theater because you don't usually, especially here in Mexico, there's different theaters, right? And the one I usually go to is mostly Hollywood movies. You don't see a lot of independent film. You have to go to other cities to actually watch independent.
Yeah. But you know what? Here's another thing that nobody talks about too. How do you think a movie gets into the theaters?
Oh,
Right? And so yeah, so how a movie, so people got to understand that, you know, either the studio is gonna, because usually the studio makes a deal with the theaters, right? And smaller theaters don't really have that conversation with the studios, right? It's a licensing. It's like every theater is like its own streaming platform. They go and there's a licensing thing, and they get to do it.
something they don't know is usually a 50-50 deal between the theater and the
Yeah,
production
after
company.
3 weeks. After 3 weeks. So usually in the beginning, if it's Disney or whatever it is, they take 90. The studio takes 90% from the theaters. So it's a 90-10. So the theaters don't make any money. That's why they would charge you popcorn to be $10.
Exactly.
Because it's the only way that the theaters could stay alive around it, because this big giant studios, they take all the money. So what they usually do is they do a windowing of, it could be an 80-20 deal, depending on the type of movie it is, right? Say 90-10, and then they would break it down to a 60-40. And then they eventually 50-50 when nobody's going to the theaters, then they give you a 50-50 deal.
Yeah.
That's how it kind of works. So look, studios do take advantage of the theaters as well, right? Because the theaters need that, but the theaters also are a little bit are idiots as well, because theaters don't know how to do marketing. They don't market the movies that they bring on board when they should, but they expect the studios to do all the marketing for them. So what if the theater said, "Look, we're going to help market in our region, but I want a better split."
Right.
Then the studio would do that all day with you too. Oh, you're gonna take on the risk as well? Great, take on the risk, market. You know, bring in your own bag, right? And then, but they don't. The theater would say, "Okay, I'm not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna put any money. I'm just gonna put it in my theater. I'm just gonna turn it on, press play, and call it a day."
The thing that is putting the trailer of the movie in other movies or putting the poster on the
Right.
theater. You know, it's like things that are not hard to do.
Right. And so, you know, theaters are a little bit dinosaurs as well, you know. And so I think it's not, studios know that too. And I talked to some of the studios, and they bang their heads with the theaters all the time. It's like a clash. It's like a fight with each other, right? The theaters don't want to give the data to the studios. The studios don't want, and in exchange, the studios still have to do all the legwork to getting the movie out there. And and they have no control on the theaters, and the theaters don't want to really help promote the movies, so they just become a platform. And so you can't really blame the studios either for how they do their business with the theaters as well, right? And then hence, at the end of the day, who does it hurt? The viewers, right? It hurts the viewers experience, because think about this: the theaters has choices where they could bring on an independent movie anytime they want. They could. You made a movie, you talk to the theater says, Regal says, sure, I'll give you 4,000 theaters for nothing. 50-50 deal. Who's going to market it? Nobody. So nobody shows up.
Exactly.
The independent film, so the theater's not going to want to put that risk in. They could, but they don't. The filmmaker doesn't have the money to put the risk in to promote each of the region across the US, across the globe. So the filmmaker won't do that. Who does that? It's going to be the distributor, right? Like a Focus Features at A24, they have the money to promote it wide. If they're the one that's putting all the money in, they're taking all the risk. They should get as much of the percentage back as they can. I would feel the same way.
Right.
I would feel the same way, so you can't blame that. So a lot of people are very quick to blame the studios, are very quick to blame, because but they don't ask the right questions. They don't ask the right questions at all around, like, how is the studio making money? How's the filmmaking making money? How do the theaters make money? And once you start following the money around how they make money, you're gonna start understanding how everything connects to each other. And then you put yourself in their shoes, and then you figure out the economics from there. What's fair, what's not. Where's the risk coming from?
Taking the bigger risk on this. Like, since the beginning, the ones taking the risk are the producers and the investors, I think.
And then the buyer takes on the next risk on it, right? I would say it's 15 times the risk, because the movie was made for $700,000. They spent $15 million. That's that's 15 times the risk. And they got 15 times the return. More than that, right? And so good for them, but it's not always like the same way. But look, to the investors out there, and and other filmmakers that may or may not be watching it, it is about the risk, right? It's about who takes on the early risk. When we come to economics and financial, let's get away from story and everything else. Let's talk about really technical type of stuff, right? Who's paying for it? Who's putting the most time into it? And what do you think you deserve out of it, right? Sometimes the risk doesn't come in monetary format. It comes in your time. The time where you need to pay your mortgage, the time where you had to cut out of your job, the risk that you had to lose your job or get out of your job, whatever that is, for you to make this thing that you want to make, right? And then just to let after a movie is shot, it takes another year to get through the post-production of everything. And there's so much variables of that going through, with that type of budget. It's easy for that to just die as well, right? If you hire the wrong editor, you hire the wrong sound designer, you don't really get that many chances to fix things.
So many things that could go wrong in a movie.
Exactly right. But Curry Barker, he's a good filmmaker. I saw his stuff. He knows his shit. He really does. And I respect him for that as a director, as a filmmaker, and someone that spent probably 20,000 hours in his craft, to get to where he's at. So this is not an overnight success. This spent years of positioning himself for success. That's how I look at it, and no single crew member should take that away from anybody, because he spent the time to be great at what he does. And people only sees what happens overnight, but that was overnight 10-year success. You know what I'm saying? Nobody talks about that stuff.
Like most people, they love talking about, he just out of nowhere became successful, when they don't see all the...
Yeah, my overnight success took 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. The harder I work, the luckier I get. The same concept, right? It's like there's no luck, it's just hard work. I mean, there is some luck involved, but we could go down the rabbit hole on this one. You cannot compare. We are totally different animals over here, right? You're in Mexico, I'm in Jersey. I came from a refugee immigrant from Vietnam. I don't know your full background or everything, right? I grew up in the ghetto neighborhood where you could get shot at any moment, and then, I don't know who everyone grows up in different backgrounds. You cannot compare. And for some reason, social media likes to compare to one another. And that's the way it is. That's just being human, I guess.
Someone told me once that it was like we are giving potentially the same opportunities regardless of where we come from if you work hard for it. But you're the one that is keeping those opportunities open. Because some people like
Yeah,
I
I
had
mean,
this issue. Reminds me of an issue I had with my movie when we produced it. The production designer, we had an issue because she had no idea that I was the one that raised the money for the movie. She thought I was just working for my partners. She thought I was just working for them. And then we had an issue, and she was like, she's just here because she's pretty. And she couldn't wrap her head around the fact that I was younger than her and I was working as a producer on a movie with people from North America. So one of my partners told her, like, you have no idea that she's the reason you're working here. She's the reason that you have
she's your boss, technically.
exactly. And she's the one that raised the money. She's not gonna tell everyone that because honestly, I just wanted, it was my first movie ever. I really wanted to learn from everyone. So I was doing everything. I was everywhere. I was with the filmmaker. I was with her, helping her actually. I was helping everyone because I wanted to get myself involved on all the process. I want to learn how a movie is made and I want to learn everything.
Everything.
So yeah, at some point she had an issue with something. It was just the most random thing, but I get it because she was the type of person. Creative people are really intense and they get
They are.
stressed. And
I know.
so I got it, and at first I was a bit mad because it's hard when they don't recognize your effort and they don't recognize that whatever you did to get to where you are is not just because someone gave away an opportunity. Is because you were smart enough to take it and to take advantage of it.
Yes. Amen on that one.
We had that issue, and then everyone was like, we're not giving her any credits and she's not working anymore. And then we had to reshoot some scenes.
Wow.
And I needed her to do something, and it was easy for me to go with someone else, but I was like, she already knows the process is going to be more efficient and more effective if she does it again. So I had to call her. We fixed our issues. We both say I'm sorry, and I was like, yeah, we're giving you the credits and you can just do this.
That's the right thing to do. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good karma. Good karma.
I don't like to have issues with people, but honestly, I think that we both learn from that. She'll learn not to judge when she doesn't know the whole story, and I learn not to judge out of someone who's just having a crash out in the middle of a shoot.
No, that's good. No, look. At the end of the day, we make movies, right? And then there's people that fight wars, and then there's people just trying to carry rice across the field, trying to feed their family, right? And we get to make a movie, right? And then we wake up with 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 legs, and 2 arms, right? With a brain that's functional. And so there's a lot of people that's not fortunate for that. And so I feel like we could count ourselves lucky to have those opportunities too. And good parenting and bad parenting, and that all fall into the same place of things. So so it's whatever whatever you believe in. But I just know that for us, it's morally speaking, and this is what Sutudu stands for: freedom, right? It's kind of building freedom for not just for creativity, but freedom for people to express themselves and how they could take the careers to a different level. But yeah, I mean, I think that's I think just the way you handled it, super professionally with her, and how you went about that type of stuff is kind of speaks volumes about who you are too, and that's amazing, because you could have been like everybody else and turn a blind eye and walk away and say, okay, screw them, move on, but you didn't, and that's good. And and you seem to have good karma around you all the time,
I try because I think first of all, the indie filmmaking community is really not is big, but everyone knows everyone, and I feel like it's good to always end in the best of terms with everyone, because you never know when you're gonna need someone.
100%. And look, it's like, it's you're here to make a good movie. You're here to tell a great story, and like, if you get to be a part of a great story, it's something. It's equivalent to, in my opinion, carving your name onto stone, if that matters to you, right? And it's something that you can be proud of for the rest of your life if you can be a part of something. And I mean, it's a privilege to have an opportunity to even do that, and so I don't take those things lightly. And and I think Obsession, such a great lesson, off the screen, of how, see, Obsession, it's more like, I know more about Obsession because of the news than, because I didn't even watch the damn movie yet, and yet I kind of get an idea of it. But it was, so Obsession represents something different. It represents not the movie itself. It represented, it's like a propaganda in some ways, right? Or it's like it's a message to the people that you could do it, right? That if you have the courage to want to step foot into the battlefield and you have a dream, you go and take it. And dreams do come true if you work hard for it. But it's not an overnight where I'm gonna, let's go raise some money and boom, I'm gonna make $300 million, right? It's like, you're smoking on that type of stuff, right? But I would say, like, it's, but if you worked hard enough and you love it enough and you respect people, and you put great karma around you, you might make that type of support. And especially if you're good to people, you will absolutely get the support that you need if you're actually good for people, right? And so I could guarantee you this: bad people will ever get that type of support, but good people do.
Exactly.
Right. So that's a good lesson learned and something to talk about, and that nobody talks about. And I'm glad that I'm doing this podcast with you, Liz. And I think this is something that is great to get the word out of what we stand for and who we are, and what we want to support, and we support people. Humans, life,
Filmmaking.
and we happen to like to make films, and we're happy to like to be in this industry. That's what it's about. So with that, everybody, Liz, thank you so much again, my beautiful co-host, and everybody, subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment, and keep supporting.